Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Manish, who is CEO of Plumlife. Hi, sir. How are you?
Pretty well, thanks.
Good.
How about yourself?
I'm very good. I'm jealous of your professional background. I said that before. It almost tricked me the first time I saw it. But for those of you that can't see it and are listening, this Manish has got a brilliant Plumlife fake office behind him, which is significantly more stylish than my blue screen. But before I dive in and compliment you on your virtual background, if you'd be kind enough, Manish, to introduce yourself and the Plumlife business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. And I appreciate you having me on with you. It's a pleasure. So I'm the CEO of Plumlife. Plumlife is a new Insurtech company, but it's built by 4 industry veterans combined over 100 years of experience. Myself, I spent 20 years at MetLife. I was senior vice president of global e-business as well as direct to consumer. So I built a direct to consumer business, de novo there. And I left there 2015 and spent the last six or 7 years before starting Plumlife, consulting with a lot of large insurers in the US, Mass Mutuals, John Hancock's, other companies like that. So I'm an insurance guy, but I'm an unsatisfied insurance guy. I'm trying to create something that make life better for what I call the heroes of the insurance business, which are the agents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The heroes, they'll love that.
Well, it's true. There'd be no business without them, right?
Yeah, that's very true. And I think you and I spoke before, and it's really interesting that someone came on the podcast before and said in a negative way that agents and brokers are the true customers of the insurance industry. But what's great is that your business is built around the premise that, yeah, that's true. Yes, that's true. Let's build something with them in mind. Because I think sometimes, even when we're selling B2B to C products or B2B to C technology, sometimes people are really thinking in a B2C way, and actually they don't think enough about that special B that's in the middle, the hero in the middle and the distribution. So yeah, I want to find out about your thinking about that. So you're not fighting against the wave, like there was very much you never thought about trying to cut them out, do a B2C play. You were always going to embrace the agent.
Yeah, certainly at Plumlife, right? So I speak from experience because I spent a number of years at MetLife building a direct to consumer business. And even when I did that, it was never about replacing the agents. It was about, is there a segment of society that either agents don't necessarily want to reach out to, that need insurance, or is there a segment that would prefer to buy without an agent? And certainly what I've learned along the way is there's not a large segment that want to buy without an agent. There is a large segment that agents necessarily, because of the insurance industry, not because of who they are, it's very difficult for them to sell to, right? It's the process is as complicated for a small $100,000 policy as it is for a $10 million policy. So if we can't make that easier to do, then we're going to lose out. And so that's a lot of what Plumlife is how do I make the entire process simple for the agents so they can serve the entire society?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so. Before I get ahead of myself, in practical terms, your product and service to the agents is what? Is it the technology stack? Is it pre-packaged products? Just so the folks at home.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I appreciate you asking. It's an entire platform from soup to nuts. So it's an agent portal that provides you with the ability to quote customers, complete applications, have agents or customers do the application. It's fully digital, works on a mobile device, which, you would think, in 2022 is not a big deal, but in the insurance business, it is. Allows you to manage cases, get paid commissions, everything's in one place. And it has product within it. So it's really a full platform, and it's pretty unique. We typically see carriers, they either work with third-party technology for parts of the experience, and they ask agents to really they ask them to figure out how to work with them, and they make them go to like 4 or 5 different places to do so. So we said that can't be. You know, the lives are difficult enough. They're already, you know, trying to reach out to customers to help them do something that they should be doing, and yet when they try to help them, oftentimes they get hung up on or things like that. So it's a tough business already. So we wanted to make that simple. So that's essentially what Plumlife is. It's a platform. You know, we don't require agents to pay anything for it. You know, they use the platform, they access our products, and you know, that's our business model. You sell our products, and you know, we obviously make money, but we don't require you to pay anything for the tools.
Yeah, no, smart. I think that's I spoke to someone's described it as a third wave of Insurtech, right? And I kind of think I'm on board with this third wave. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the first two were. The first was definitely distribution. I'm trying to think what the second is, but in the third wave, they were really talking about the way the markets. We're not disrupting, right? We're sort of evolving now. And do you think you agree with that? And do you think that says something about you as founders? Like, you're from the industry and you've kind of said, look, this is a friction point of the industry, rather than kind of taking that outside view of saying this is broken. It's like saying, no, it's not broken, but there's bits of it that can improve, and you're spotting that. Yeah, I mean, where do you think we are in that Insurtech evolution, and do you think that says something about you as founders more than anything?
Yeah, no, and I do think we're in another wave of Insurtech, whether it's the second or the third. You know, I'm not exactly sure either with you. I mean,
well, it's clear that I don't know either. So
I do think you're right. The first wave was about distribution. Maybe there was a second wave that's still going on relative to like data and underwriting. Not as exciting to me as maybe this to others. But this third wave, I think, is coming, and it's about coming back to distribution the way it used to be, and how do you make that better? And I think, you know, whether it's an evolution or revolution, I'm not sure. It is probably more evolutionary, because at the end of the day, you know, we're not replacing agents. I think people have figured out that, you know, agents are here to stay. Even though that first wave was kind of, hey, let's cut out the customer. Let's make this easier. I mean, cut out the agent rather. Can't cut out the customer. Let's make this simpler and easier. So I think that has a lot of implications that, you know, around the kind of talent you attract to the industry. I think some of these first waves, you know, no, and I don't mean this necessarily in a negative sense, but, you know, people tried to buy insurance. They found that it was difficult, and they said, I could fix this. Yeah. And, you know, I think there's a certain amount of positiveness, right, that you have that type of confidence. But I also think you're missing a lot. You know, it's not that simple. It's a regulated industry. You know, it's not only regulated by one entity, it's regulated by 50 different entities, because, you know, in the United States, there's 50 states that all have different rules and requirements. And, you know, and if you don't know much about that and some of the idiosyncrasies, it could be very difficult. So I do think that this next wave is going to bring a lot of talent that's been in the industry and ask them to think differently rather than replace them.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that does make perfect sense. And I think that's one of the challenges of the industry. And I think one of my criticisms of the industry has been that because I have exposure to other industries, because my job is providing talent for Insurtechs. So, if you need a chief revenue officer, it doesn't mean that person's coming from insurance. And if you're selling SaaS, it's probably better that they don't. It's probably better that they bring in, you know, these broader skill sets. But when you compare those other industries, people are very encouraged to change roles, change kind of industries. Like, if you sell SaaS, it doesn't matter if you sell SaaS in the education space or financial services space. Whereas in insurance, one of our skill sets is we get these hyper specialized skill sets. But the challenge is moving away from that thinking. And I worked with a really smart kind of client once who said, look, if you get me the smartest person in the underwriting team, I'm pretty sure they'd be the smartest person in the claims team. And they could probably turn their hand to the risk team, and they were essentially saying, look, we need to get smart people in, and we need to, I think as an industry, let go a little bit. Especially. Yeah. I think we're very protective over it because we think this is our value, but it's like, no, you're just if you're talented at that, you're probably talented at something else. And I think that's probably some of the shackles we're struggling to shake off.
Yeah, no, I think what you bring up is a really interesting point. And to be honest with you, when we think about talent, we don't actually, it's not as important how much insurance industry experience you have. And what we're looking for really is two things. And it differs if you're in the industry and if you're not in the industry. Obviously you've got the normal, do you understand if it's a marketing job, do you understand marketing and all that? But beyond that, we think about two things. If you're outside the industry, do you have, we want confident people, but do you have the humility to learn and to think this might be different? Or are you coming in saying, I know how to do it. I've done it 10 times in these industries. As soon as I figure out, how to speak the language, I'll do the same thing I did somewhere else. That we don't want. We want someone that's really inquisitive, learning, and then the opposite, if they're in the insurance industry, it's not the opposite, but it's kind of the same thing. But if they're in the insurance industry, how willing are they to say, I know how this was done before, but I'm still going to question it, right? Or are they going to say, I'm not going to fight that battle because I did it 10 times already. And that's the harder part, is to find people in the insurance industry that are willing to say, let me look at this differently. And likely probably because they've tried it a lot of times and we're beaten down, and they don't just, they don't get back up. So that's kind of how we think about talent is it's all about learning, really. Are you interested in learning?
It's really hard to be creative in a business context if you're not given the, we talk about sandbox environments, for example, for technology, for businesses and things like insurance. So, people can fall over and we take some of the kind of barriers away. But I don't think we do that with people enough on an individual level. We have grads. When you get super grads and you get these grad programs, they work on rotation. And I think then we settle you somewhere and then we go, right, you're never going to be rotated ever again. You're going to stay there. And I was listening to this, I'm trying to think what it was on. I was listening to a podcast and they basically, it was about venture. And they said the problem with experts is experts are good at telling you how it was done in the past or how it worked in the past. And they were talking about that kind of innovative part of entrepreneurship, as say, when you're trying to do something new, how you've kind of got to just listen to your beliefs, right? And taking it back to kind of the day-to-day on insurance. Now, I appreciate how big a challenge this is. A big insurance carrier wants people in their individual roles and wants them to work in that. But I do think we've got to try and be better at being braver at rotating our talent, taking our best people, trying them in different areas, because it's the innovation that's going to make the business thrive as an industry-wide thing. I just don't think we're very good at it yet, and we need to be better. But I'll get off my soapbox for a minute and ask you some of the questions.
I don't disagree with anything you said. It's through variety that we learn, and bring different perspectives, right? I mean, that's the whole concept of diversity. It's like, it's not just about something that feels right. I mean, that is good. It does feel right, but it's a business strategy. Diversity is about bringing different perspectives so that you can look at problems differently and solve them differently. So it applies to all types of diversity.
That's when I have my cringe moment when I hear people say not right cultural fit, and you're going, what you're basically saying is that they don't agree with the same things as us.
Yeah, they're not exactly like me.
Yeah. What's interesting for me, because I get a lot of kind of, we get a lot of this sort of tech-driven startups that are, from the tech world, operating in the Insurtech space, and they're going, we don't want that kind of like closed insurance mindset. And what I think is interesting about that is, like, by saying that, you're basically going, all of those people in insurance are the same, and we don't want anyone that thinks like that. But then you're having a group think mentality with, this
against it.
this in your own thinking. So it's a really dangerous and difficult game to play in sort of building a culture, and that's why it's so challenging, I think. What about you guys? It's four of you as co-founders, different skill sets, or how do you complement each other as a team?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we definitely have different skill sets. Three of us have actually, interestingly enough, worked together for probably 20 years. And then the fourth one of us who you would never know that we hadn't worked together that long, but it's only been a few years. So it's someone we met, in the last several years. And then we're hiring people, again, some are brand new to us and some we worked with in the past. I heard this study one time, and I don't know if it's urban legend or not, but they did this thing where they looked at box office success of Broadway plays, and they graphed out, has the cast worked together before or not worked together? And when they always worked together, everybody worked together, wasn't very good. And when they've never worked together, it wasn't very good. But in that middle, where like kind of half of the people have worked together and half hadn't, that's when there was the most success. And again, I heard that, I think, in a business school class or something, but it always resonated with me because it just made sense, right? You don't want to be in an extreme of anything. And so that's I think the way we are with both our founders and the employees we hire. Like we definitely don't want to shun talent that we've worked with before, but we also don't want to be comfortable and say, yeah, these are, we've worked with only these people before, so that's all we want. You have to really balance that. And that's what we've been building here.
That's I can't miss an open goal like that, Manish, because that's one of the problems with clients or potential clients, and we're talking to them about their hiring, and they're saying, in one hand, they're going, we really believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm saying that's great. On the other hand, I'm saying, how are you doing while you're hiring? Oh, we've got some adverts out, and then we're taking referrals from our existing team. Great. So that's all the people that you know in your circle already. So that's already kind of a really limited kind of worldview. And then advertising is people who are currently proactively looking for new roles. I was like, that by default cannot be like the most diverse pool. Now that's fine, but you can't parade the two things. Like you can't. They are at odds with each other because to truly get diverse ideas in the door, we have to strategically, methodically kind of approach kind of how you hire new people. Now that's really difficult in a startup, so I have massive empathy. But at the same time, it's my pet peeve is when say, "Oh, we're doing everything we can about that." And it's like, well, probably no, probably there could be more to be done. But the speed at which you have to grow on a startup is prohibitive to some of the kind of stuff that you might want to do from a kind of a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint. But long term, it can hurt you, I think, because you're not getting some of those fresh ideas in the door. So that's the challenge. I wanted to ask you. Let's bring it back to the agent.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'll talk about recruitment all day if I'm.
I know, right?
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is that agents have really had to adapt during the kind of pandemic. So less of the kind of knee-to-knee stuff that they used to do. Culturally, how's that kind of impacted the agents that you're speaking to? How have they adapted? And probably, obviously, where has Plumlife kind of fit into that equation? Because you've launched over an interesting time.
Yeah, no, and timing certainly, timing is everything, they say. But the pandemic, if you will, and it was happening before the pandemic, just because of new customers are becoming more digital native or digitally, they require digital experiences. But agents, historically they sold by coming to your house, right? You go to their office or you come in. It's a face-to-face sale, and that stopped. With COVID, and so everything had to change. And I think an analogy for us is always good here. It's like what finally happened in insurance is what happened probably 15, 20 years ago in brick or mortar retail, where people started to buy online. And so if you were a retailer in a local town, you had three choices, and the third choice didn't come till a little bit later. But the first choice was just kind of ignore it and hope for the best. And I think we know what happened there. The second choice was to kind of build your own retail presence. And I think there was a period of time, I don't think you see it as much anymore, but there was a period of time where GoDaddy and Wix and all these other companies did really well because people were building their own websites, and they were terrible. I mean, you could barely buy anything on those things, and they just were complicated. And I think now what's happened is, if you're a mom and pop retailer, you have your own goods to sell, you can actually succeed because of not just Amazon. You could sell on Amazon, you could sell on Shopify. They've built the platforms to make it easy for those retailers because they figured out the stuff that on a onesie twosie levels, people can never figure out. Shopping cart abandonment, UX, innovation like subscribe and save from Amazon. I mean, these things are being done at that high level, and that's how we think of Plumlife. So we built this platform. It's got our direct marketing expertise, it's got our UX expertise, and we're bringing it to these agents who they could build a website, and actually a lot of them have, but they're not. That's not going to work. I'll just put it that way. And so I think it's a unique time, because I think agents are realizing they need digital tools, they need digital presence, and it's very difficult for them to build it themselves. I mean, the feedback we get from our agents is they love it, because it gives them immediately. They have their own page that they can use in social media. They can put it on their Facebook, their LinkedIn, wherever they want. They have tools to allow them to prospecting. We do a lot of the automated follow-up and texting of their clients. I mean, we have text message programs when people start an application and don't finish. I mean, can you imagine if you're an independent agent out there, like, how do I know that somebody was starting an application and dropped off on page 3, and then text them something that, that's just impossible to do, right? And so we provide those tools. And I think that that's only going to accelerate this change of agents doing business differently.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I was thinking as you were talking, because you obviously US focused business, US based business as well. Culturally, you're talking about one of the most advanced insurance economies in the world, and yet life is very traditional. Like there's a lot of very traditional cultural aspects to how insurance is sold on this level. Why is that? Is it the complexity of the products as opposed to other parts of the world? Is it something else? I'm just sort of intrigued as your take on that. Yeah,
I think there's a couple of different things to it, and it's interesting. This is what I go back to a lot of the times, and insurance companies, the way they work today is they pay a commission to an agent when there's a sale. And if there's not a sale, they don't pay a commission. So they don't really worry too much about that whole marketing interaction experience, because they don't really see it and they don't suffer from it. It's the agent that, hey, if I don't make a sale, I don't get any money, right? And I've spent all this time working on that. And I think that has a big effect. That's something that direct-to-consumer companies learned the hard way, in that they went from, they took an industry that doesn't really care about the sale being finished, to spending all the money on marketing out the door up front. And so now they've spent all this money and they've got to try to make sure sales close, but their partners, the carriers, don't really care that much. And so I think that's one thing that happened. And as a result of that, agents have built so many workaround systems that carriers don't even know about, that kind of make up for the inadequacies of carriers. And so it just kind of became like a snowball effect, right? Like, we're not really going to worry about that, so we're not going to give you good technology to help you with this. So then the agents will figure out their own technology. So then there's no real cry for anything better. And I think now that agents they can no longer come up with workarounds for kind of the things I was just describing, right? The direct marketing expertise, user experience expertise, right? They used to make up for it by, hiring an administrative staff or other types of workarounds. So I think, to me, that's a large part of it. It's kind of the fundamental. And you figure it has to be something like that, right? It's not something like, nobody just thought of that. It has to be something innate to the insurance industry. And I think it is that carriers are so far away from the customer. They're so far away from the customer, that they have no idea what an agent goes through. And again, and I don't mean to I'm exaggerating a bit, but they don't really care, because if an agent spends 4 days trying to close a client, and an underwriter takes an extra week to do it, and they lose a sale, what did it really cost the insurance company, right? Not that much.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because they should care, right? Because on the aggregate, that makes a big difference. But I see that. It's that thing of starting to feel like my life now.
Yeah, well, it's so funny, because even on a personal level, it's like my kids don't clean things up in the house, right? And it's like, I'll be like, I'm not picking that up, right? I'm not going to pick that up because they should pick it up. And then like, and I don't see them as much because everybody's all over the place. And after a day, it's like, it's just driving me nuts. I'm just going to pick it up. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like insurance companies. It's like the agents are like, I need some better technology. And the insurance carriers are not getting around to it. And the agent's like, well, I just got to figure it out myself.
Yeah.
Right. And they go ahead and they do it because they can't stand it anymore. So I don't know. It's just one of maybe probably a lot of reasons, but I do think it's something fundamental to the industry.
And there must be a culture amongst agents as well. It is a high performing industry. Like they are being efficient, they are selling at mass. Like, so if you're the carrier, what's your incentive to invest in that technology to arguably get the same result? Probably hit the same net result, but you're just spending more to get the same result, really. So
I don't think they know how much. I think it could be better. I'll be honest with you. Like I think one of the biggest things you notice in the insurance industry is the number of clients who start to buy insurance and never finish. And I think that's a very large number of clients. And I don't think the insurance carriers really appreciate how much they could unlock if they did do that. Because again, they're so far away from that. And again, it just, to come back a little bit to Plumlife, I mean, that's why we think the agents are the heroes, because it's so hard to do all this stuff and they get such minimal support. I mean, digital to most insurance companies is like a fillable PDF. I mean, and there's still a number of carriers that require you to use paper. I mean, it's 2022 and you're filling out an application in paper. And, I have some companies that will only support Internet Explorer. And I don't know, you're obviously very technical. Like that's not a supported product anymore. No. It doesn't. I mean, it's like, and literally, I think it goes away in a few months. But
it is going away.
But it's already been replaced. I mean, nobody browser tests for Internet Explorer anymore. In fact, I use a Mac, so I can't use their tool.
I had something recently where I think it was a mortgage thing. I think it was a mortgage on my, and they wanted me to send them something from my business on letterheaded paper. And I was like, I haven't got any letterheaded paper. They were like, well, you must do your business. I went, why would I? It's like I don't have business cards anymore. Like I just don't, I had some when I first started my business because like 5 years ago, because I was excited about it. And it seems like a fun thing to have your name on it. And you're like, I'm sure some people still do. But I just don't bother. I'm like, I've got there's ways around it. I can share my QR code from my LinkedIn or, this sort of things that, and it's interesting that's just the evolution of some of these businesses, exactly as you say, the kind of fillable PDF, and that's there. But that's a lot of the thinking. And that's where we go back to that innovation thing we're talking about, where that is an evolution of, and that is a better product than was probably there previously, because previously they sent out paper copies. But what a lot of this kind of like, we've innovated is we've taken a paper copy and we've just replicated the entire process on a digital format without questioning whether the steps need to be there, if there's any proprietary data that could be useful or anything like that. So fascinating. I know that you're enabling the broker to have a lot more analytics at their hands than they would do, right? So I wanted to kind of ask you about how does that help them in a practical sense? How does that help them make sales? What are they doing with that analytics suite that you've got for them?
Yeah, so analytics are huge. I mean, and it's really permeating society. I mean, I can't watch a sports game anymore where they don't talk about like, coaches are now using analytics to make decisions, right? And those coaches are, some coaches struggle with it, and some don't. And so for us, we're excited because the Plumlife platform has the analytics built in, and so we don't have to have these deep philosophical conversations with agents about how do we use analytics or why analytics important. They just get it. And so how it manifests itself is they make more money. So an example would be, when agents are trying to work with the client and they use their own email or their own phone, let's say, to reach out to the client, versus when they use our platform, there's a 30% increase in client completion of applications. And that's because there's a lot of analytics. It's just constantly looking at who's this client, What are they doing? When should I be reaching out to them, through a text message, through an email? How should I be changing the process? Where are they dropping off so that I can, analyze, hey, on page 6, I'm asking them this question to be a lot better. If I asked it on page 2, I'd see a higher completion rate. And so all those analytics are going on behind the scenes and are just making life a lot better for agents. But if you just, if you're just creating a digital PDF, you're not going to get any analytics, right? And so that's why it's actually important that our platform does everything too, because you have to look at not just one part of the process. You have to look at the whole process. We've seen a lot of people say, well, I'll just make my part of the process better, but it might make another part better. And so that was important to us to have the whole platform for that reason as well.
Mm-hmm. It's such an obvious win. Is there any pushback at all from agents? And if there is any resistance to it, where's that been?
There's some resistance to it because, but not much. Not in general, everybody's cool with it. But let me tell you the things you have to be careful in and nuances are. And it's actually going back to the sports analogy, right? It's like, most of the time the analytics will tell you to do X, but sometimes you just have to use judgment, right? And say, I know that's what the analytics say, but the game is going in this fashion and I'm not going to do that. And so sometimes we have analytics that say, I'll give you just a practical example, hey, send out these, in these 4 days, send out these 9 emails. And, an agent or a client will be like, stop emailing me so much, right? And the analytics will say, well, I know you're making this customer upset, but you're going to get more sales by doing this. And you have to balance that, right? And so we see some agents saying, hey, why are we doing this so much, right? And so that's where you have to kind of bring in that non-analytics perspective without giving up the value of the analytics. There is definitely an art to it, right? It's not, if you just do pure science, you're gonna get a pop, but you may do some long-term damage, right? And that's a balancing act, that's complex, and we're learning into that all the time. It's not like, I'd love to say we figured it out. We do have a principle, which is, if an agent doesn't want something, we don't make him do it. It's not like you have to do that in our platform.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've got some. I'm big on investing in tech to do my role for me, but I still do all the sourcing myself. I haven't currently invested any of the sort of algorithmic driven kind of source stuff. The type of stuff I work on is quite bespoke, so that's never going to get. But of course, we use stuff to reach out, to schedule, and all of this. And the stats always kind of, there is a nuance to those stats, and I'm like, I know that even if it looks brilliant, there's a certain level of content that there's only so much people want to hear from me. Doesn't matter how nice I might be. So it's really, that's a really good analogy. I think the sports thing of just going, the stats say this, but sometimes you kind of, that's where the expertise comes in. You've got lots of kind of direct consumer experience, which we touched on. Has that helped you in this kind of like development of this product, even though you're doing a B2B2C? Where's that kind of like helped you out in building your business?
Yeah, I think it's been critical, and it's almost like you kind of said it, B2B2C. It's got the C in there. And so you have to understand the customer experience and what they're going through, because you have to help the agents, right? They're bringing so much to the table. They're bringing things we've never heard of, and we listen to that. But they're also open to listening to us to say, I know, you think this makes sense, but if you do it this way, and we did it in D2C this way, you're going to get better results. And so having bringing that mindset to the table is really important. It also is important in treating our agents with the same mindset, right? So the D2C experience said, hey, if we didn't have an agent involved, how would we make this as easy as possible for the customer and make sure it happens? And then bring that same mindset. That's a great mindset to have. It's like, how do I make this as easy as possible for the agent to sign up for Plumlife, to use the platform, to learn more about it, right? And it's that same kind of thinking that's helpful. And for us, it's critical because we have a lot of agents under us that have already signed up for the platform. And we want to make sure we're providing them value, but we can't just hire hundreds of people to call every one of them, right? So our model is a digital model, and we primarily, want to provide digital service, anticipate things that they need, and so that makes us think about things differently. Like, I'll give you a quick example. Most tools that life insurance companies, they'll tell you, we got your application, it's in underwriting. And that's like the sum total of the status.
Yeah,
and usually and 3 or 4 days go by and the customer like, well, where's this application? It's like, well, it's still in underwriting. But what is going on? And they're calling and we put right on our portal, hey, it's in an underwriting because, for such and such reason, we had to order a statement from the doctor, and ordering a statement from the doctor literally can take anywhere from a couple days to a couple months. And so we'll say, hey, we ordered this from the doctor. That somebody made a phone call today. Somebody made a phone call 2 days ago. Here's what they said, and just giving them the details of what's going on, because we learned in the D2C space, if you're not going to make an immediate decision, you have to keep people engaged. You have to keep them up to speed, and to put that right on the portal. So that's just one example of kind of how that mindset has helped us.
Yeah, that's super. I can see that kind of follow through. The last thing I wanted to ask you was about technology, and I think you and I discussed this with a bit of tongue in cheek, but I do think there's something I'm trying to get at here, which is one of the things I touched on in a conversation I had earlier today with someone, was that I think some of this kind of distribution plays, why they didn't take off in the way that the rest of the market had anticipated. Most of the time, you're only buying insurance once a year, so it's like, there's only so much that I care as a consumer about making that process more efficient and better, because it'd have to be really bad. Like, I would have to spend days and weeks at it for me to care enough, to sort of really kind of go to someone. But so is technology ultimately, is it making people want insurance more, or is it just potentially making the industry more profitable? I think is what I'm kind of getting at. So like, are more people buying insurance as a result of the technology influx, or is it more that we're just being more efficient, so we're just making more money out of the insurance that it's already sold?
I think it's definitely more the latter. I don't think technology has made anybody want to buy insurance, which I think people forgot. Actually, I don't think people they didn't think about it. So if you think about Insurtech 1.0, I think people said, hey, I mean, look at all these new innovations that came about with the web and technology, Facebook, virtual reality, gaming going to the next level, Tesla building. People said, hey, I never would have done this, iPhones, I never would have bought those things, but this technology is so cool now, I'm going to use this stuff. I'm going to switch over to this stuff. Insurance isn't like that. There's nothing cooler about insurance because of technology. It's still pretty boring, but how I buy it is, I think, what's changing. And I think that insurance companies are figuring out how to do it more efficiently. Sadly, I don't know that they're making more, insurance companies are making more money just because of the way the insurance industry is set up. They're still paying the same amount of acquisition to an agent, whether that agent uses technology or not. It's almost become like the whole reason Plum exists is to say, we're no longer going to ignore how hard it is for you to do your job. We're actually going to give you the tools to make your job better, right? Even though, we're still going to pay the same. We're not going to be more profitable. We're going to help you make more sales, and then you're going to make more money. And then ultimately, I think we'll make the more money, but more from volume, not from efficiency. So it's weird because I think it will become much more efficient, but those gains, hopefully, and I believe will redound to the agents and the agencies more than they will to the insurance companies. Insurance companies will pick up things, efficiencies around underwriting and electronic data, and that certainly they'll make more money on that. But in terms of the sales process and that part of it, I don't think that's fundamentally going to change for insurance companies.
No. Well, let's pass it on to the brokers. Because
there you go.
I have affinity with the middleman, as I would do.
There you go.
Manish, you've been super kind for your time. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. Super interested to see what you guys are up to. And yeah, I hope I'm going to be stateside sometime soon, so I hope we get a chance to meet each other in the flesh, because I'm super excited to see what you guys do.
That would be awesome. I would look forward to that.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me again.
No, not at all. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.